He goes to do the Groundhog Day report. He completes his assignment. He says, all right, let's get on the road and let's get out of this place that represents where I really don't want to be anyway. So they prepare to get on the road to leave, just to run into a storm that blocks them from being able to get out of this most hated place. He runs right into this snowstorm that does not allow him to move according to his schedule to get out. And we know anytime the elements get to work in a snowstorm, that's a work of God. That's a part of his element. So when he puts a bridge, or rather puts a brick wall up where you would rather there be a bridge, sometimes you have to learn how to deal with that barrier until God allows you to either go through it or go over it or go under it. But Phil is stuck and can't get out. So he says, well, fine. I just have to stay here for the night. We'll stay here. We'll get a hotel room, and we'll move around first thing in the morning. So the next morning comes around. Alarm clock goes off at 6 a.m. And Sonny and Cher is on the radio. I got you, babe. That's what's playing, 6 o'clock in the morning. Bill wakes up. He's like, yes, it's the next day. It's time to go. But as he's packing and as he's preparing, he realizes that things are starting to look a little familiar. Rita is saying and doing the same thing that she was the day before. All of the news crew and all of their team, everything's looking like everybody's saying and doing the same thing they were the day before. He begins to check out what's going on the news on the television. And whereas it should be February 3rd, it says it's still February 2nd. Phil's going, now, wait a minute. That has to be some kind of glitch. There's no possible way that I'm still stuck on Groundhog Day. There's no possible way that I'm still stuck on February 2nd. I laid my head. I went to sleep. A time has passed. A night and a day, and I'm waking up, and there is no possible way that I would still be stuck in this hated place. Some of us lay our heads at night with all kinds of worries, with all kinds of stresses, but we trust and believe when we wake up the next morning that something will have changed and shifted in the atmosphere. And every now and again we wake up to discover that the same thing that we went to sleep with on our minds is the same thing that we wake up to. And we're saying, God, how can this be possible? And how can this be so that I gave it over to you last night when I laid my head, but then I woke up this morning and it's still there. And God told me to tell you, women of God, on this morning that sometimes you cannot get rescued out of a situation because he needs you to be a victorious person who comes out of that situation. So if he rescues you out of it, then there's no victory for you. But if you learn how to go through it and go through it with grace, then God can make you the victorious one. So Phil is stuck. He's going, this is not possible. He continues through the day, has to do the same thing that he did the day before. He says, okay, I go to bed tonight. Tomorrow's going to be different. He wakes up again. I got you, babe. 6 o'clock, the alarm goes off, same thing. Same news report, same radio songs. Everybody's doing the same thing. And he's going, now wait a minute. How can this be possible? I laid my head a second time. I wake up and still I'm stuck in this most hated place and in this most hated assignment. So Phil does what most of us probably would do if we realize that, you know what, it looks like I'm going to be here for a while. So we kick back, get comfortable. My pastor would say, couch back, cavalier. We just get comfortable. And we say, well, if this is the mess I got to be in, then I'm going to just kick my feet up and I'm going to get comfortable right here. And I'm not going to fight anymore. And I'm not going to try to strive anymore. And I'm not going to try to encourage myself anymore. If this is where I got to be, I'm going to just kick my feet up and I'm going to get comfortable right here in the middle of it. So what Phil does is he decides, I'm going to just get comfortable right here. And he starts making everybody else's life miserable because he's miserable. So since he's stuck, he starts purposely messing up people's relationships in the city. He starts purposely giving crazy weather reports. Starts doing all kinds of crazy stuff to just mess up what everybody else has going on. Because in his mind, the next day, I can start all over again. Nobody will know. But what Phil doesn't realize is that while he's the only one stuck, everybody else is really going on with their next day. So everything that he's doing to cause detriment to them is affecting them every day. There's no start over point for them. And I believe sometimes we will do that. We get stuck in our season. We get stuck in what we're going through. And we don't realize that the people around us are still functioning and moving. And they want to pull you along. And they want to get you out of your rut. But they don't know how. So we got to give them some room to work. But Phil doesn't give anybody room to work. He just starts taking them through. So I say all of that to lay foundation for what we read in Jeremiah 33. And it talks about the covenant that God makes with day and that God makes with night. And we know that God is not a man that he should lie. Amen. And we know that there is no way that God can say or do anything that he would go against. He has tied himself to his own word so that he cannot go against his own self. So if it's in his own word, then he makes sure that it has to come to pass. So God makes covenant with day, and he makes covenant with night. He says, and if you have the ability to make me break my covenant, then you have the ability to make me out to be a liar. So that cannot happen. Well, Elder, why is that important? Because typically we look at day as representing the good things. And we look at night as representing our negative times and low points and periods that we go through. And then when you realize that there has to be a high and there has to be a low, then you have to consider the fact that God cannot allow us to always have highs and there never be a low. If you never experience sorrow, how do you know what joy feels like? If you never experience sickness, how do you know what healing feels like? If you never experience a negative report from somebody on you and they lied on you, how do you know what it's like for somebody to love on you and give you life and speak positively of you? How do you know what it's like to experience a high if you've never had a low? And in seasons, there have to be days and there have to be nights. There have to be highs. There have to be lows. Has to happen. Because in order for God to bring a thing to pass, for there to be a seasonal shift, we have to go through every cycle. Have to go through each one. Now, what's interesting about the word night here in Jeremiah 33, it's not just simply talking about the night as in the darkness when the moon comes out and the stars. But when I looked at this word night, and it talked about God keeping his covenant or keeping his agreement with night, it talks about there being a period of a covering shadow. Okay. That's a place right there to shout, and let me tell you why. Even in your darkest times and in your darkest moments, God has a covering shadow that is over you, that's still keeping you protected from all of the elements, from all of the negativity, from everything that could be thrown your way. There is a hedge that he still has around you, even when you're going through your lowest moments. It's just like Job. I'll let you in the hedge just a little bit to do just enough to him, but I promise you, because his faith is what it is, and because he loves me the way that he loves me, he's not going to curse me and die. So there are times when you will go through some things where God will let something get in just a little bit, but there's still a hedge of protection around you that says you can't take that one out, though. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Understanding the days and the nights and the seasons is important, because Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season. Now we know on the calendar there are indeed 4 seasons. You have your spring, you have your summer, you have your fall, you have your winter. But in the spiritual realm, I believe that there's a 5th season, and that's called due season. And And I believe that what happens sometimes for the men and women of God is we get stuck in a Groundhog Day right at the cusp of our due season. Right when it's time for something to shift. Right when it's time for something to work in our favor. Right when it's time for something to turn around for our good. We get stuck in a cycle of Groundhog Day. And we start acting like Phil. And since I'm stuck right here, I'm going to get comfortable right here. Not realizing that on the other side of this day is a brand new dawning that God has set up for you. But we get stuck right there. Get stuck. So Phil continues to go on acting out of character, just doing the absolute most. He even takes it to such an extreme that he tries to take his own life. He goes and he picks up this groundhog, puts it in the car, and says, I'm going to go drive off this bridge. Because since this groundhog is the source of my troubles, this is my most hated assignment, this is the whole reason I had to be here. Since this is what's the source of my trouble, I'm going to put it in the car with me. We're going to drive off this bridge, and this is going to end all of my troubles. And we do that sometimes too. We'll look at the next thing and the next person and we'll blame our situation on them. And we'll say, well, since you're the reason why I'm going through it, then you get in and buckle up and we both go ride out together. And that's what Phil does. He blames his situation on this groundhog, puts it in the car, drives off the bridge, and says, now I know it's over. Just to wake up again on February 2nd at 6 a.m. I got you, babe. I don't have a problem being transparent. I've pulled a Phil before. I've taken the bottle of pills and drunk it down with a bottle of cough syrup and said, this will take care of all my troubles. And my alarm clock didn't even have to go off because for some reason, God said at 7 a.m. on the next morning, get up, get dressed, go to work like you would have yesterday. And I'm going, but last night I did this. Why am I even still here? He said, because not this one. Not this way. Not like this. You don't get to decide your future. You don't get to decide your destiny. You don't get to decide that your purpose is over when it's just beginning. So regardless as to what we go through, regardless as to how hard it might look or how difficult it might seem, God says, not so. I still got work for you to do. I still have purpose for you to accomplish. So Phil wakes up again. I got you, babe. He's more confused now than ever. But he begins to do something smart right here. If you're going to write down points, these are a couple of things that I want you to write down. The first thing that Phil now has to do, he begins to alter his mindset. And the way he does that is by acknowledging that there is a problem on the premises. And the problem ain't with everybody else, it's with him. So the first thing he does is he acknowledges. He wakes up again in his most hated day and says, okay, what's going on? Why am I still here? Clearly there's a problem on the premises. Clearly there's something going on that needs to change, that needs to shift in order for me to get out of this and get to the next place. So after he acknowledges that there's now an issue, the next thing he does is he analyzes the situation. This is what Phil does that's smart. Phil goes to Rita, and he decides to have a conversation with Rita. And let Rita know what's been going on for the last few days. That he's been stuck on February 2nd in Groundhog Day. This is why it's smart what Phil does. Rita is the object of Phil's affection. He's in love with her and he desires her and he wants life with her. But he's not been good enough, quote unquote, to get with her. He hasn't had the courage to go and say, this is what I desire, this is what I want. He sees her in his future and knows that his future looks a whole lot better with her in it, but he has not been able to allow himself to connect to her. So this is why it's smart. Phil goes to his future and has a conversation with his future about his present. Please do not miss the significance of that. When you are stuck in a place and you're trying to figure out how do I get from here in order to get to my next goal or to get to my next destination, it's in your best interest to have a conversation with your future. It's in your best interest to get in your prayer closet. It's in your best interest to fall down on your knees. It's in your best interest to fall down on your face and have a conversation with the only person who can see into your destiny. Get on your face, talk to God, and find out what is going on in my present position that I need to change in order to get to my future destination. Phil goes and has a conversation with his future. He says, Rita, look here, girl. Here's what's going on. I've been stuck on February 2nd. I've been stuck in Groundhog Day. While y'all are living your lives and going on every day, I've been stuck. And I don't know how to get out. And I need some help. So Rita looks at him and she hears his side of the story, the situation. She says, well, what have you done differently from the day before than what you did today? Nothing? She said, well, what did you start doing? Messing up people's lives. What did you do yesterday when you woke up? Mess up some more people's lives. She said, so you've been doing the same thing every day, but expecting different results. So you've been acting the same way every day, but expecting something to get better. The last time I checked, the definition of insanity was doing the same thing, but expecting different results. She said, why don't you try doing something different to see if you get out of your Groundhog Day? She said, why don't you try waking up and doing some good in the community and in the city and see if the calendar day changes for you? How does that apply to you? Well, you're stuck in your Groundhog Day. What did you do differently yesterday than the day before? Did you pray? Did you read your word? Did you talk to a pastor or a counselor, somebody who could give you wise counsel? Did you seek God's face? Or did you just say, well, send some stuff? Send some. And usually when we get on our downside and get in our issue, that's when we don't want to pray. That's when we don't want to read our word. That's when we don't want to hear anything the pastor has to say. And those are the times when we need God the most. So she says, what have you done differently? So then Phil has to reevaluate how he's handling this thing, and he has to come at it from a different angle. So now he wakes up, and rather than getting frustrated about being stuck, he starts doing things differently. He's like, okay, all right, I'm going to make the people happy. He starts doing positive things. He starts speaking positively to people. He starts making good changes in the community. He starts putting couples together and playing Cupid. I mean, he's doing all of this good in the city. And still, waking up February 2nd. So finally, Bill wakes up one more time. Once more again. February 2nd. Gotta go handle this Groundhog Day report. Give it again. And Phil gives the best report he's ever given. Because he's allowed himself to not allow his situation to change him, but he's changed in his situation. Even if my boat is still rocking, I've got to figure out how to plant my feet and stand still. He learns how to change himself in the middle of his situation to deal with it better. Now, this is what I like about the Groundhog Day.